So, this is Things Go Sideways, where you have honest conversations about what it looks like when the path you're on suddenly changes and you find yourself choosing what you're going to do and who you're going to be as you move forward. Today's guest is a speaker, a coach, and the author of a recently released USA Today featured bestseller called Regroup: How to Reset Your Mind to Unlock Hidden Energy, Enjoy Productive Peace, and Feel Like Yourself Again. Welcome, Barbara. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk to you.
Hi, Kiki. I've been looking forward to this conversation all week, and it's only Tuesday, but it's I just seeing the work that you're doing and the conversations that you're bringing up, I think are really landing with people. So thanks so much for having me as a guest.
Well, I mean, it was such a great gift to actually have the good fortune to meet you in person. And as you were crafting this book and to hear a little bit of your story, I was super excited when it got released. And of course, to high acclaim and great praise. And now it is the Things Go Sideways book club book of the month that everybody's reading together. And so
Wonderful.
I'm super excited about this. And I thought, this story, there's a story at the beginning of the book that I think illustrates, a sideways moment for sure from your own life, and maybe explains a little bit about how you came to even be so interested in brain science and in the path that you took. And I thought maybe you could take us all back to a particular moment at a Cracker Barrel where there was
Yes.
a discussion that happened. It's also connected to your later work. Could you share a little bit about that moment?
Yes, and it's a moment that I'll always remember because I can quickly bring myself and just like I feel like right there. It's just so crystal clear. It was on Thanksgiving Day, and it was a day, it was like, ooh, I don't have to cook. My dad wants to go to Cracker Barrel, my family does. And so just expecting this wonderful celebratory day. And it was a little bit after my mom had passed, and I quickly had jumped into caregiving. There were some things going on that I wasn't aware of, and being the sole decision maker, I had found myself in this place of limbo. I still had young children. I had my career that was just launching for the first time, and now I was doing a lot of caregiving, emotional caregiving, and so here we are at Cracker Barrel, and my dad hands me a paper, and at the top of the paper it says ancestry.bomb. And I opened it up, and there's all these familiar pictures of relatives that I have in albums. And it was a story of a cover up. I had heard of the story, growing up in childhood of a murder cover up, but there it was in the paper. And my dad says, "Look, we're famous." And I just remember feeling this moment of shock
Hmm.
and also anger and confusion. And there was our family history of mental illness and all this in the paper. And I think that was a moment for me. I don't know if you've had this feeling. It's like a draw the line in the sand, like never will I go back to where it was. And I just remember feeling we've got to break these chains of shame in my family. I want to really take care of my brain. And it just put this fire or lit this fire in me. So it was out of pain, out of anger. But I think that really propelled me to going in the direction I have with uh, really taking care of my own brain, but also teaching other people, because there's a long line of Huntington's disease, which is a genetic brain disorder that runs in the family that can accompany other mental health issues. So it was just one of those moments that I'll always remember. And at the time, I would not have wished that on anyone, but I'm so grateful because I needed that fire lit inside me.
Yeah, and I love the way that you frame this conversation, that you look at that moment as a definitive time where you just make this decision that, things are going to be different. And maybe at that point you didn't know exactly how, but then in every choice and every decision and the way that things unfolded after that, it took you into that path of breaking patterns and really exploring and using your curiosity to investigate and to begin to change the path for your own family, but for so many other people too. So part of your story is this caregiving, which so many people, especially in our age range and stuff like that, we find ourselves in this season of caregiving where there's the sandwich generation, which is sandwiched in between caring
Yeah.
for our children, but then also caring for our parents. And that's one of those, caregiving is one of those sideways seasons, I think, where you don't always know that that's a sideways season. It comes from love and responsibility, but there's
Yes.
also all of this other stuff that's sort of connected to it. Not necessarily something going wrong, but it's just something, it's a time you find yourself trying to navigate life and figure out, what to do. And you in your book call out guilt and shame for feeling the burnout, for feeling overwhelmed. And I thought maybe, can you talk a little bit about why caregiving in particular and finding yourself at this sort of in this season, why it makes it so difficult to identify that burnout? Like, what is it about it that makes it hard for us to say, hey, I need a timeout or I need help?
Yeah, I can speak from my experience. I think a hard thing for me to work through was my own guilt of feelings I had, even towards my dad, even towards my mother. I felt like she left us way too soon at 65. And so I was struggling with a lot of guilt and shame with just my own feelings. And this is something that I haven't found a lot of caregivers talk a lot about. And I would think that, this isn't fair. This is happening to me, or this is happening to dad or us. And I was on the cusp of finally figuring out what I want to be when I grow up, finally having my business where it was, and, getting my kids to a place, my marriage to a place. And then this was a 15-year navigating this journey with dad. And I just found myself in this inward tug of war, feeling like I want to be the daughter that honors my parents, that does what I need to do to take care of them, make them happy, all these things. But then I felt this pull, but I want to have this purpose too. I want to live my calling, yet carrying both of those and feeling that inner tug of war in my heart. That's what I call it today. It just was really hard to find how that aligned. Like I knew I was being called, but I also had this, and I really wanted to be present with this. How can I do both? Do I have to give up my calling in order to, so I really
Yeah.
struggled with all those thoughts. And I think that it took me a really long time to come to terms with even just a simple question. What if there's another way? What if I didn't have to choose between either or? What if I could do both? And what if it looks completely different from what I think it should, or what other people say, what caregivers, their journey typically is. So I had to really be willing to give up what I thought would be viewed as the best way by other people, or what other people thought of me. And I had to think in terms of how can I be at my best during this season. And I came to the realization, and it wasn't like a one moment aha, it was over years, is that taking care of me is taking care of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like taking care of myself is the best gift that I can give anyone.
Yeah.
And so working through those feelings of feeling, doing something for myself and realizing that, yeah, I feel a little selfish, but I can focus on self. that's important to focus. If we don't focus on self, doesn't mean we're a selfish person. If we don't focus on self, we're depleting our, resources, our physical health, our emotional health, and even spiritual health.
Yeah. I feel that so deeply because I think that when I was reading through the book, one of the stories you tell is about how at one point you had booked a woman's retreat and it was happening. You were like, why isn't anyone signing up? And then it turned out that it was like over Mother's Day or something like that. Like it was like, and you had not thought about yourself to the point that you hadn't even thought about the fact that you might want to celebrate Mother's Day or something. And I love that your husband brought up that maybe this was for you. Like maybe it's okay that you have this beach house and that it's maybe this is a time for you to take a break. And you were able to do that. You were able to, for the first time, be able to say, okay, I'm gonna give myself this, and how you began to integrate that into your life. You talk about, I'm going to keep bringing up all the things I love about your book, by the way. You talk about limbo season, which for me is kind of what happens after things go sideways for people. Like, it's like you find yourself in this place where things are never going to be the same the way that they were, but they also haven't yet formed to be what they're going to be. You're figuring out, you're in limbo and figuring out, what is going to happen now. And I love you say this, I'm going to quote you to you. What if limbo is not a mistake or weakness, but rather a purposeful pause that asks you to listen differently? I love this because it's like there's this gift that's hidden in these experiences. So most of us treat limbo like it's a problem to solve. You talk about this time as the reset you didn't choose. What shifted in how you saw this? How did you begin to recognize the gifts that are there and just looking at this? Because it does not feel natural to look at this as a time that is offering gifts when your nervous system is like, oh, it's dysregulated. I don't know what's going on.
KiKi, you were absolutely right. And I think for many years, I didn't recognize it. The way I treated, being limbo was I equate it to feeling like I'm stuck in quicksand. And just to get the image, like you're stuck in quicksand, there's this low, but you're stuck and you're trying to pull yourself out. And it's like no matter what you do, you're not getting any traction. And that was my natural reaction. I would try to get myself to a place where I didn't have stress, but then I turned around and there was this fire. And many leaders that I talk to often respond the same way. They get frantic, they, burn the midnight oil. They have to reach that deadline so they can finally breathe, but then they're not able to catch their breath. There's another fire. And so I think finally out of exhaustion and realizing, okay, this is the definition of insanity. It's like, okay, what if I just give myself some space to breathe? What if I'm intentional about that, not expecting anything? What if I were to just recognize this is what it is? And I always hated that phrase up until then. This is what it is. Because for me, it was like waving a white flag. And I'm like, I'm not giving up. But what if instead it could be a step of surrender
Yeah.
and just releasing any expectation? Not that I didn't have hope that it wouldn't be better, but I think it was just over a series of just not making any progress in any strategy I did and just realizing this is getting harder. Something needs to change.
Mhm.
And recognizing that my response was appropriate to the situation happening. It did warrant there, it was stressful. And to look at stress as not the enemy, but a message and a signal and a chance that I could choose a different response. So I really look at limbo, not that I enjoy it, not that I got into that place like, woohoo, here's a limbo.
Yeah.
But I remember the this long stretch of limbo land I came through, and I know that I can get through other limbo times.
Mm. Yeah, I think that that is so important. The more, I guess, aware and the more experience that we have and just going through life and understanding that this is natural. These points are going to happen. There's not one of us that gets through without, having the moments that disrupt things or shake things up. And they do offer so much learning if we're able to appreciate them for what they are. But I think, it's so natural for us to blame ourselves in the beginning and to say, what did I do wrong? Why is the old playbook not working? Why are the old rules not the same anymore? Why did this change happen? I was a good person. I was a good girl. Like
Yeah.
I did all the right things. And you talk about survival mode not as a mindset problem, but as something that the brain is actually doing biologically. How did understanding that change, understanding the way that the brain just operates, change the way that you thought about your own experience?
For me, it was freeing just to understand how I'm wired. I
Yeah.
used to think previously having panic attacks, I used to wonder what's wrong with me, and I
Yeah.
used to see myself as broken, not enough, not strong enough. And when I understood how I'm wired and how my body was responding in real time, that it was, at a heightened state many times. And sometimes it was at a low state. I was disconnected. So for me, understanding how my nervous system responds, the times when my mind goes blank, if I'm speaking, doing a presentation, it's like, oh, that's why my amygdala is too high, my prefrontal cortex is fine. That's why I can't think. But I think for me, that was power just to have the education because that gave me a pathway to which strategy I can actually implement that would work for me. So I had to go through for myself and back in, I think it was 2017, through a particular scan, it did reveal 3 mild injuries that I had that completely explained some of the symptoms that I had from, trauma responses to
Wow.
heightened anxiety, depression. And so it really gave me hope. And I was able to see myself with more compassion. And I was able to see my dad and my family with more compassion with their brain health issues, just because I'm like, oh, it wasn't their fault. Their brain functioning was low. And it just started to connect the dots for me. And when you see something, you can't unsee it. For me, that's how brain health has been. It's like, oh, I see how that ties into leadership, how that ties into decisions and relationships, our goals and purpose. So for me, it was a tough pill to swallow at first, but I tend to be proactive and it's like, oh, let's work on this. I see it as a puzzle. Let's see what we can do to optimize this area.
Yeah, I love that. It gives us a chance, a fighting chance at being able to proactively address things that, may be impacting our brain health or, maybe it's a crisis situation that's occurred in our lives. And we say, okay, I understand I'm not making decisions the same way I normally do. Like I'm not going to. This makes sense that that would be altered. What can I do to address that? And that's what I love about this book is that you do actually go into that's part of this framework is this is the way that you go about sort of addressing how to regroup and how do you look at the brain and scientifically say, okay, this is a disruptive time for me. Um, things I am not going to be looking at things the way that I normally do. What is the best way for me to move forward? And you have the framework laid out. One of the stories that's in there has to do with you give examples all the way through, and you're talking about someone who discovered that even though he had gone through so much, through these walks in nature, he was able to begin to have experience better decision making and be able to experience life in a more positive way. And you give the scientific reason why that is actually, it makes sense that that would begin to come together. You have lived what you're offering people here. You have actually gotten a lot of this from, the research, but then also through your lived experience. What does it mean to regroup as a practice and not just a moment? And how is that maybe different from when people talk about, quote unquote, getting back on track or something like that? How is this different?
Yeah. So I love explaining it because we like to think, we talk a lot about I need to reset, I need to recharge. So I think of, we plug our phone in the wall and we're charged up and
Hmm.
we need that. However, if something is not aligned or working properly, we can plug that in all day, but we might lose power more quickly, or it might not power up. And so regroup it's what you do before you reset. It's kind of like the foundation. We need to actually take a step back and see what's happening. What are the root causes of my energy gone and drained? What are the root causes of me feeling disconnected?
Hmm.
What are the root causes of me overworking, feeling overcommitted? Even if I'm getting a good night's sleep, I'm still feeling tired the next day. Like, what is actually happening? So that you can make little tiny tweaks so that we can have that fuller reset and have that fuller recharge. So if you think of the military, they had a regrouping time where they're like, okay, let's regroup. Let's figure out a different strategy for when we get back in the game. So when we regroup, we're able to have a different kind of clarity, and a clarity that aligns more with what we're wanting in life, what where our intentions are. And so that's, I believe, the subtle difference. It leads to a reset and recharge, but it's the very first thing of just the willingness of stepping back. And in one of the chapters, I talk about our body has its own regroup system. Like our brain literally every 90 minutes does this rinsing and recycling, like it's scrubbing all the nasty stuff, getting it out. And we have to actually take a break in order for that to happen. And what we do is we tend to push through, we work harder, we ignore it, and then it just starts to accumulate into a place where we're quietly burning out. So it's really often just simply paying attention to our body when we're feeling tired in the middle of the afternoon. That's your brain telling you it's a message. Let's take a break.
Yeah.
Let's just go outside, walk outside, let's walk around the house, let's do something different. Doesn't have to be long. But then what happens is when we honor that, when we honor our regroup rhythms, then we have this beautiful clarity. We're more productive. We notice these energy boosts in our day.
Mm. So you talk, this is so great because in the book you talk about taking at the very beginning, you would just take 5 minutes, right? And it was
Yes.
only 5 minutes out
It
of
was
each day.
only 5 minutes. There was this children's, oh my goodness, there was this children's book called 5 Minutes Peace. It's a little, children's book. And it was about a mama elephant who struggled to get time for herself with her kids. And it was called, I Just Need 5 Minutes. And then I read a book, I think there's a book, 1 Minute Manager, and
Hmm.
there's one called The 5 Minute Manager for Moms. Can't remember the author. And I'm like, I can find 5 minutes in my day. And so I literally started with getting 5 minutes to myself, as a mom, as a caregiver. And I was able to accomplish that. Like, I was like, ooh, I did 5 minutes. And where I could find another pocket of 5 minutes, I added that on. And it's just, it's almost laughably small, yet it really works with people who say, I don't have time for myself. And
Hmm.
it's like, do you have 5 minutes? Do you have 2 minutes? So even just taking these little tiny increments 2 or 3 times your day can actually have a bigger impact than we realize.
Yeah, I believe that. And I think that that makes me think about this question of trust because trust is a topic I love very
Mm.
much. It's near and dear to my heart. I'm always looking at, the way our relationship with trust. And in times when our lives get disrupted and we, are uncertain about the rules around us and if everything is still going to work the way that it's worked before, because so much has been disrupted, it's very difficult to have trust in anything, including ourselves. And so, what you're talking about here is also an exercise in trust, I think. It's like this: if you're able to say you're going to give yourself 5 minutes each day and then honor that, that's a way that you're building in trust for yourself. How did you learn to better listen to yourself and trust your body and trust these signs and signals that your life is giving you, your body is giving you? In times where there was disruption? Like, are there other things, other ways that you were able to tune in and begin to better trust yourself when it's difficult to trust anything?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. But trusting yourself is, I feel like when we can start with us, our trust with others expands too. And it always begins with us. A couple of different things. Sometimes these, like, I have a wonderful support system, and that includes people. And I have a mentor who used to tell me, listen to the whisper, don't wait for the 2x4. And for me, that's like a wake up call. It's like, oh man, I've had the 2x4 moment like so many times. But really trusting and listening to that whisper, the little subtleties when you're feeling, you know, just pulled. And it could be a pull from something that I said yes to that maybe it should have been a no or a not now. And
Hmm.
it could have been agreeing to something and feeling that it's an obligation and I'm feeling a little resentful towards it. It
Hmm.
could be, I'm just, really tired, but I push myself harder. So our body and our brain and nervous system is constantly communicated, yet sometimes we're not tuned in or even really know the language that it's speaking in. We know our own language and our own thoughts, but our body and brain communicates in so many different ways. Another thing that I learned in graduate school is something called the window of tolerance, which for me really helped me kind of picture each day. And it was really understanding our capacity day to day. Like every day, we're gifted with a certain capacity. And sometimes our window is wide open and we can conquer the world and get all this stuff done. We feel amazing. We sleep well at night. And other times our window is just barely open or halfway open, yet we still give 100% when the window is only open this much. And we wonder why we're so exhausted. And this is another one of those tug of wars because being a recovering perfectionist, like I want to do 100% every day, no matter what. I want to be that dependable person, get it done. But there is a cost when your window is only open. You can get by for it a few days, but if you continually work outside your window of tolerance, it's going to catch up with you and become a 2x4 eventually. So that really helped me remember, you know, I have a choice to wait, for a 2x4 moment, or I can listen to those little whispers right now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like I want you to write that book that's all about like tell me the symbols, tell me the signals that I can listen to so that I can honor those faster and identify them faster.
And KiKi, I
Um,
think the hardest thing for me was giving myself permission to put out 60% on a day when my window was 60% open or even 35%. Initially, I thought, well, I'm failing if I'm not doing 100%. But then
yeah.
I realized I'm failing myself if I'm over committing every day or overdoing. And one of the chapters is each of the letters in regroup stands for something. I think of it as a resilience framework. And there's a positive benefit. There's also a risk for not doing it. And the E is for energy and how that is our fuel. And I had to really recognize what my energy drains are. And they were little quiet drains that I didn't see at first.
Yeah.
Yet when I was able to see those, like the window of tolerance, it really helped me to be able to say no more easily. Today, I love it. I can freely say no or not now, or let me think about it. I rarely say yes on the spot.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said yes to this interview. I'm really excited that you
Oh, I'm
said
so glad
yes.
too.
Yeah. You write that you never could have predicted. I'm transitioning into this really interesting, the forewords by Dr. Amen, that many people recognize the name and everything. You write that you never could have predicted that you would end up working with Dr. Amen and using those tools to help others. That is an interesting road from that Thanksgiving at Cracker Barrel and to where things are now. Could you talk a little bit about how you got there, and then also, did you ever imagine alternate paths? Like, do you look back and think, wow, what if I didn't do that? Like, would I have ended up over
Yes.
here? And yeah.
I would have never imagined. And honestly, if it were me back then, I'd probably say, no, I don't want to do that. It doesn't sound fun, but I cannot imagine life without it now. And I'm so grateful for everything that's happened to shape me who I am today, to be
Mhm.
able to now educate people, but also get to work with some incredible clinicians and incredible educators that are boots on the ground impacting communities, patients, and clients, teaching them easy strategies on how they're wired. And I've really learned that talking about mental health through the lens of brain health, people get excited. People want to talk about having a better brain, and it makes a heavy subject a lot lighter. And we're able to see ourselves more in the lens of compassion versus judgment and shame. And being able to work with Dr. Amen and oversee his certification program, it is such an honor to be doing that. I don't take it lightly. And I'm just so grateful for my team and just the amazing people who are, again, just so excited about these methods. And I think for me, Adam Grant wrote this amazing book called Think Again. I don't know if you've read
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
I've always been drawn to people in the health industry that think differently, that they go against the grain of modern medicine. Not that they go against modern medicine, but they think differently, they think expansively. I think that's why I was so drawn to Dr. Amen. And it's like one of these people that has gone against the grain in psychiatry, and people really either love him or they aren't so happy he went against the grain. But I truly believe that just changing the way we talk about something about mental health, like it's a growing issue, but changing the way we talk about it and reframing it, our brain literally starts to see it in a different light.
Mhm.
And we have to get ourselves out of our regular environments. Like for my regroups, I always get out of my house, out of my own four walls, because my brain starts to be more creative. And so when we allow ourselves to take something that maybe we haven't looked at very closely before and just start to examine it in different ways, it's amazing how we become more interested and more vested. And when we're able to tie that to our health, our own lives, it becomes even more impactful, not just for ourselves, but other people benefit from our own growth.
You mentioned making sure, understanding yourself so that you know that you get outside your own four walls. And is there one principle in regroup? And I was really curious about this, like what you would say about it. Is there like one or two principles in regroup that you find the hardest to hold on to? Like, are there some that are harder to do than others? You seem like you understand and appreciate the energy one really well from like the conversations we've had, but are there any that still give you like a little bit of trouble?
Oh, yes. And I am in process. I would say to update your thinking. I
Mm,
tend to have a negativity bias. And I would say a lot of that is how my nervous system was wired, even from an early age. So I'm constantly scanning situations. I'm a great planner. I predict the worst. And I just need that for my brain to like, oh, okay, you've done the worst case scenario. Now you can focus on the positive.
Yeah.
So I have to really focus on training my brain to be geared towards more of a positivity bias. So I have a certain appreciation for my brain. Like we need to have some anxiety and some fear, so we'll make good decisions.
Hmm.
So we won't jump off that cliff or have too many drinks. So that's appropriate, and some worry is appropriate. But where I have to be careful is I don't cross that line too much. So I
Hmm.
give myself permission. Like I like to call it, I have accurate thinking. So I have that tendency for negativity bias, but I also have built up my positivity. So it's like they're balancing. And I talk about the automatic negative thoughts, the ants, which I absolutely love. And so I have these negative thoughts, like these several ants that tend to wreak havoc if they're not tamed. Like if I let them kind of go rampant, but I have to really use what I know about having a positive statement, replacing that thought, renewing your mind. And
Mm.
so it's amazing how we were created. Our brains change shape all the time. And so whatever we're feeding it, telling it, our brain responds to everything through chemical reactions, and we have the ability through neuroplasticity to rewire our brain towards a more positivity bias. So I could talk about that one. I would say that's the one that I still am in process with.
Mm. Okay. So, I mentioned the part about caregiving before. That hits really close to home because I have some dear friends that are in that role. And I also have just come out of doing that, and I'm looking at the potential for going into that again. And
Mm.
so when you were in the deepest part of those caregiving years, when the fatigue was the highest and the clarity was the lowest, were you able to stay curious about what was happening, or did that feel like a luxury you couldn't afford? What was your relationship with curiosity at that time?
Wow. When I think of my lowest lows, I sometimes it's hard to see beyond that. And I think giving myself permission to feel the lowest lows, but not stay stuck there,
Hmm.
really it because there were so many times I wanted to give in with my business just because it was a lot of demands. But allowing myself a certain amount of time to feel that and acknowledge and then be able to release it, whether it's through journaling or therapy or having a regroup, then looking at, okay, what's the next best thing that I can do right now in this situation? What makes sense for this season, not beyond what I'm hoping for right now, but what's the next best thing in this season? And how can I make this as manageable as possible? So allowing myself to let go of some things that I wanted to do full throttle, like I was in the middle of graduate school, which I was so excited about.
Hmm.
And I ended up taking a year leave of absence during when my dad was in hospice. He was in hospice for 10 months. And so, even though I didn't want to let go of school, it was really necessary for me to focus on those last moments with dad and be fully present
Yeah.
with him. And then, when we got through that time, okay, I'm in a new season, I'm in a grievance season. How can I shift things? I can't go back to this season and do it the same way. But in this season, this temporary season, what does this look like for me? So it's interesting. I have all these little seasons
Yeah.
and each one looked differently, but the hardest part was letting go of how I did the previous season because that's a part
Yes.
of you and you're a different person.
Yeah.
There's this wonderful book, I think it was written in the 70s called Welcome to Your Crisis. And the reason why I loved it so much was the exercises and the questions that the author gives you helps you extract what was in the previous season, acknowledge, but helps you know what to take into your new season and how to see yourself in a new light. It's just beautiful.
Interesting. I need to go find that. That sounds really helpful and would be a good companion to regroup.
Actually, I would say when I started that first Mother's Day, that was my very first regroup. I
Mhm.
had that book with me, and that
Really.
helped me with these little transformations into to what my book is today.
I want you to be able to speak to the person who's listening to this, who is right now, they're in the middle of their own limbo season, their own sideways story. What feels true and honest to say to that person right now?
I think it would be simply giving yourself permission to do a 5 minute regroup each day. Just schedule it in your calendar. If you were to look at my calendar, I have all these little brain breaks throughout. And I look forward to them because when we prioritize ourselves, like our most important client or the person that we're taking care of or that we care for, we start to value ourselves more.
Mm.
So I think for me is in a one of the stories in the book, Katie, she has a beautiful story. One of the things she encourages people to set the bar really low for yourself in these low times, because that will be achievable and you'll be more likely to follow through.
I love that. Thank you so much. Your story, your work, your book are such gifts to the world. And I really can't thank you enough for taking the time to share that with me and with this audience. And your book, Regroup. I know you have other books, but this one is my fave right now. And I'm really happy that it got to be a focus for this group of people who are part of my little book group. I'm going to go ahead and say a lot of us are carrying around more than we've named. And it might be caregiving, like what we've spoken about today. It might be responsibility. It might be the weight of being the one that others lean on. And the particular exhaustion that comes from loving something or someone so much that you forget to check on yourself. Well, that can be particularly difficult too. But maybe the answer is just being present. Or, as Barbara says in her book, you don't have to be crystal clear to be brave. You just have to stay present long enough for clarity to catch up.